Now, I'm not going to go over the fundamentals of Blazor. If you're here, you probably have used Blazor, and you know the basic difference is that Blazor server side actually runs on the server, and we get a Microsoft JavaScript application, Blazor JS. We get a Microsoft JavaScript application that actually runs in the browser, opens a WebSocket back to the server, and then just a bunch of binary messages are constantly streaming back and forth. And if you press the F12 button in your browser and look at the developer tools, then you'll be able to see all those little binary messages going back and forth. And you really can't see. There's no visualizer yet for those messages, but I'm not sure the progress. But the Canary dev ring on the Edge browser has a beta visualizer, I'm told, for these binary messages, but it's not yet released, not out in the open. But if you click on one of those binary messages, you can see sometimes on render completed, or you can see a little bit about what's going back and forth. And you can definitely see by the size of the messages which ones are just kind of life cycle events that something happened, and which ones are actually transferring data because you are pushing something, or not you, but the framework is pushing up some changes to the DOM. Okay, some other changes to some other architectural changes are its intersection with Azure. So if you're going to go to Azure App Service, then you want to make sure of a few of these settings. The first one I'm going to call out is 64-bit, the platform. So many times, and across a number of our clients, we see a few of these mistakes, and they're not intentional mistakes, but it's just how it goes. You start with a test environment using the free tier on Azure, and that's great because the free tier gives you a certain number of minutes per month, and you don't have to pay. But the free tier doesn't support all the features that you're going to need in production, and a few of these features I'm going to call out right now. The first is the free tier of app service. It doesn't support 32. It doesn't support 64-bit. It only supports 32-bit. But the production servers that you're going to use have more memory than the 32-bit memory space. So if you merely upgrade the size of your app service server instance without changing anything else, you're going to start paying for a server with more memory than your application is configured to be able to use. And it's just going to be a waste. So you want to make sure when you go to the production levels of app service to change the platform to 64-bit. And also a little bit further down, WebSockets. The free tier does not support WebSockets. And so WebSockets is necessary for the built-in Signalr hub that you don't have to do anything. It's just kind of built into Blazor. But with WebSockets turned off, Signalr falls back to JavaScript long polling. And then all of that processing, it consumes a very noticeable portion of the server's CPU in order to do JavaScript long polling. It will functionally work, and you won't really notice until you start to get a little bit more traffic on the server, and you wonder, why is the CPU pegged? Why are we using all of the CPU? We haven't scaled that high. It's because the server is doing JavaScript long polling and self-hosting at the Signalr backplane. All right, so you want to turn WebSockets on. Now, the second thing you want to do is you want to offload Signalr to the Azure Signalr service. The Azure Signalr service is dirt cheap. We've seen super high traffic and several millions of messages. It's always going to be a rounding error in your monthly Azure bill. Okay, so go to the Azure Signalr service. It is never going to be one of your big line items in your Azure bill. It's just not going to. And it offloads so much CPU from your web server instances running Blazor server side. Okay, and even if you're not using Blazor server side, with any kind of interactive application with Blazor WebAssembly, you're going to want to use Signalr. It's just an obvious choice for non-durable real-time communications. And so make sure you're offloading that hub, the backplane, onto the Azure Signalr service. And then finally, Arr Affinity. This is not supported by the free tier. This is sticky sessions. And you won't notice a bug until the first time you scale up to 2 or more than 1 instances in your web service in Azure App Service. So with Blazor server side, this is a big deal because all of the state for a particular user session is on the memory of a particular web server. And so for Blazor server side, it is a must to have Arr Affinity turned on. With Blazor WebAssembly, doesn't matter because the web server is only hosting web services and perhaps any jobs that you might have running. All right, wanted to stress on that. All right, so another application is similar space to the livestock auctions, just applied in a different sector, is car auctions. And this is literally the Visual Studio solution structure of an auction application. And you can see the dependency diagram of the different projects in that particular solution. You can see that this has 2 Blazor applications, one called UI, stands for user interface, and the other called UI.admin. And this is a pattern that it's actually not unique to Blazor, but it's a pattern where you have your most of your customers, most of your users use a regular web application, but instead of saying, I need some admin only functionality, let me do role-based permissions, and maybe some of the pages can only be accessed by certain types of users, and then you have this role-based permissions complexity in your application and authorization, everything like that. Instead, the other choice is to create a completely separate application that doesn't even authenticate non-admins. Okay, so it was the choice of, do I add authorization logic and differentiate user types within an application, or do I not even worry about authorization and only allow authentication of admins? And so that choice was made here. Second website, a lot lower scalability needs, but that's called UI.admin. And then you can see with the dependency structure on the left, you can see a onion architecture style of dependency management.